Hey, welcome to a Crossfire conversation with Chris and Frank. Chris, you've been shooting a lot of hunter matches lately in the area around here, Wyco and stuff like that. What are some of the things you've identified? Because you also RO'd a recent hunter match, so you get to see how everybody attacks a stage. So what are some of the things you've been looking at recently?
One thing that I noticed, and it really jumped out to me, was that on the stage I was shooting at, the targets were wider than they were tall. And most of the misses were above and below. And when I say most, about 80% of the misses and about 80% of the shooters had misses on a target that wasn't that far away, 500 yards, and it was about 6 inches tall or something like that. So it didn't have a lot of height, but the misses were over and under. And it wasn't a range issue because it was up against a hill, so you could basically range the whole hill and have a solid range. What I noticed is that there were a lot of misses above and below the target. And because you have two opportunities to shoot at it, when someone missed and they saw that it was above or below and they made a correction, oftentimes their second shot was also a miss. And it got me thinking about issues with trying to use what people think of as field equipment in the field, but sacrificing all of the work that we've done in recent years to create a solid platform with a reliable follow-up shot. So I've done a little bit of tests and experiments, but I've also asked around to see if that's something that's kind of a recurring issue, because we always talk about, heavy and stable or light and unstable, and that bounce back and forth is an interesting question to me. But it stood out because of the frequency of misses and the frequency of missed follow-up shots.
It almost sounds like kind of a problem we had in the Marine Corps with our packs and the fact that we didn't carry a bipod. So as you move, your pack changes over time, right? So we're shooting off the pack. And we found early on that, you're pulling stuff in and out of the pack, you're eating, you're drinking, you're doing this, and putting on different layers of clothes, and so your pack is constantly changing. Our solution was to standardize the load out of the pack to help support the shot when we needed that. And to me, it sounds like in the hunter course, where when you just walk up to a prop in a stage and you have something, that's one thing. We have wood that we're always using with our bag on it. But in the hunter situation, things move a lot more dynamically. You're constantly shuffling and shifting, and now you no longer have that stable platform unless you create it. So if they're using something that can be manipulated with or without their knowledge, the pack moving and changing, then that would create a problem. And so that is something you said you looked at, and you went and shot it, tested it, and found it was part of their loadout. So
yeah, at least anecdotally with my initial experiments, and I shoot a lot on paper. But let me describe, let me paint a picture for something that I saw. So here's one of my packs, and let's pretend that this bench is a rock, and a shooter may come up to their stage and use a tripod to find the target, but then they'll try to use their pack as a shooting platform. Let's disregard the tripod for now. And so let's say they put their pack on the rock and they think, okay, because I'm in the field, I'm gonna use my pack as a shooting rest. And so they build a position and they use their bag as a rest. Now, if they had practiced on paper, and if a shooter practices on paper, then you're going to run into what Frank just pointed out, is that your bag is full of stuff, and the stability of that stuff shifts as you move or it relates to the prop that it's on. So I would see a shooter shoot, miss, make a correction, miss, and oftentimes it was on the same, it was low and then it was low. but it was in the same spot. And I would ask him, did you make a correction? Yeah, I saw it go low, went up, still shot it low. I would see a lot of shooters shoot off their packs like this. I would see some shooters, shoot off the top and try to stabilize with their body holding the bag. I would see other shooters develop. They would pull bags out of their packs and try to distribute the load, which makes sense, right? They would use a big shooting bag and their pack in some way. And I would always see these vertical shifts, and I thought that it had to do with something about the stability of that platform. And so what I did was took all of the shooting stuff that I had, multiple bags, and made mountains of unstable shooting positions rather than just using bipod in a bag. And take a game changer and put it on a bag in the front and a game changer on the back. And this isn't unlike what I would see shooters doing on these rocks. They would try to solve the problem by stacking up more and more bags. And when you get a sight picture, the sight picture is stable. I don't have any kind of inherent wobble to the system, but there's also less stability in this system, right? And like Frank pointed out, things can settle. And so what I wanted to see was, first of all, was there a point of impact shift using a stable platform like this? Was there a point of impact shift from my zero? And then if I took a shot and then made a correction and followed up and took a shot without changing anything, what would happen? And so what I did is the following test. First, I took 6 shots. 3 from a modified prone, right? Bipod, rear bag, just kind of bent over on the table. And then 3 more shots standing just off my tripod, because that's how I normally shoot, to get a baseline reference for my group. And so I had a baseline reference, and my zero, this is new factory ammo, so my zero was off 2/10, but that was consistent. And so that was a zero issue, but I was really just trying to see what was the effect of group. So this is 6 shots, 3 modified prone, and 3 standing off of my tripod with a bag on it, because I shoot better with a bag rather than clipped in when I'm trying to do something like groups. I'm not really a group shooter, right? But anyway, this was my reference. Something I'm familiar with, something that's stable and I know doesn't settle very much with a single bag. And then what I did was start stacking bags that would settle on subsequent shots. And so the paper here is this is the 2/10 shift. But what happened was, as I started to stack bags up, I started to get a vertical, I'm just gonna turn it around here, a vertical shift in my group. So this was stacking 3 bags, and it's 6 shots, stacking 3 bags. And what happened was the group, it got vertical. Then I changed my 0.2 and I did it again, and I switched the bags from the front to the back, and I had this vertical deviation in my groups. And then what I did was take out the squishy factor, right? And I just used squishy up front with a tripod rear support, and all of a sudden that shift came out. And then finally I ended with a box test with a 1/10 up, right, down, left, just to make sure that my scope was tracking. And this was done just modified prone. It's only 4 shots, just to make sure that I could demonstrate that I have trackability. So I had unstable or squishy front and back, squishy front and back again, but reversed what I was using, and then squishy in the front, but a stable tripod rear support, and I had a little bit of lateral shift, which is interesting because I wouldn't have guessed that I would have lateral shift with a tripod rear support, but it is what it is. And so I measured these, and these basically doubled my group size, right, from my baseline. So if I take it doesn't matter what the size is; it's the size compared to the baseline. And so what I would encourage you guys to do is get a baseline group test and take a piece of paper, right? You guys know I'm a fan of paper, and put some dots on it, and use kind of a baseline group size that you shoot from something stable, and then test combinations of using your pack and using the support that you have to see what kind of give your follow-up shots might have, and what your initial point of impact might have, how that would shift, as well as a follow-up shot. So you have to be doing this in two. So I would say, if I was going to do another test or encourage people to do those tests, I would do one shot, right? One shot, and then two shots, right? So that you've got a baseline for your initial point of impact, and then a reference with your follow-up shot. So it'd be 1-2, 1-2, 1-2 to see if your position is shifting and how to take that shift out of it before you go to the field. Because my hunch is that the reason there were so many misses is because people were using a position of stability that changed on the recoil impulse.
So what's interesting with what Chris is saying is he's seeing this bounce in this vertical, and it's the same thing we see talking about marksmanship in the prone. I've mentioned it with Mark on the podcast with the rear bags. People create hinges in the back because they don't have their rear bags straight and solid. They'll have it on an angle, or it'll be too short, too tall, something. So they compromise the rear bag. When they recoil and come back, that hinge is created, and it brings the nose of the rifle up. So they go over the target, and what happens is people just dial up to it. So now if you change positions and you go to another position, you will shoot high if that action is not happening when you dope the rifle to begin with. So we've noticed problems, and again, it's at the back of the rifle, so it's, little goes a really long way out forward. So having a compromised rear bag can then compromise your data, to which when you change positions and platforms will no longer be valid because you're not recoiling in the same way. And I think you said you noticed that with bipods when you go forward. Mm-hmm. So putting a bipod forward changes the recoil dynamic of the rifle, changes the way the barrel moves, and that can become a tenth or two plus of your dope change when you're trying to build these positions you're not used to.
Right.
So,
and the thing is, we're talking about precision rifle.
Right.
And with precision rifle, it doesn't take much movement to have a noticeable and measurable effect on our group size, which then translates to distance. So we're talking about very minor shifts, but those very minor shifts, when we're shooting at targets that are smaller and smaller, those are going to put us off plate. If we're just trying to keep it within 6 MOA, we're not going to probably see that shift. And if you're shooting a huge group, you're not going to be able to shoot the difference. But as people's skill level goes up, and there are a lot of great shooters, but those great shooters may not have explored the territory of field position shifts on position, because traditionally the level of precision and accuracy, there's a buffer with hunting.
The plate usually makes it up. And now also too, think about this. The difference between the front and back of a 20 MOA base, right? I have a flat base, a 20 MOA base. The difference between the front and the back on a 20 MOA is 11 thousandths of an inch. So 11 thousandths of an inch back here at you gives you 20 inches at 100 yards. So that's how small. Human hair is about an inch plus downrange of movement when you're in the back. So those things do show up. They do matter. And how that rifle recoils in that position you've built, especially if you haven't changed or practiced or you're just trying to build something on the fly, can definitely have an effect.
Yeah, and to me, it was really eye-opening that the material that the rifle's resting on can double your group size. And that's why I like to fall back on the concept of knowing, first of all, where your baseline is, and then the effects of what you're doing on the baseline to be able to judge. Because if I'm shooting something that's 3 MOA, I'm probably not going to care. But if we're getting down to 1.5 MOA, now that really is going to have a profound influence, because if my ammo is 1 MOA and I'm shooting at a target that's 1.5 MOA, but the effect of the group is to double my, or the position doubles my group, now I'm talking about a 2-inch group on a 1.5-inch target. There's no way that I can reliably expect a hit all the time. And that's not a position I want to be in. I want to be in a position where I say, if I do everything right, I'm going to hit the target. But if you're a 2-inch shooter shooting at a 1.5-inch target, you could do everything right and you could miss. And there's nothing that you can do about it other than collect the data and information beforehand to know what the effects of what you're doing are going to be downrange. And I think that knowledge, right, is power, and that knowledge empowers you to train. And that's the whole point of this series.
Knowing's half the battle, right? And exactly like Chris says, if you realize this feel creates a flex and a movement and a bounce, well, then you have to know that ahead of time to say, okay, this isn't right. This does not feel correctly to set the rifle up this way. And you won't know that unless you've tried it. Mm-hmm. So knowing's half the battle, guys. And that's why we're here. Thanks for watching.